Today we're taking a look at Hisuian Goodra VSTAR, the deck that had one of the best conversions at the EUIC. It was the 6th most popular deck in day 1, and then became the 3rd most popular deck in day 2 of the tournament, with one making top 8 and another getting the record to make top 8 but just bubbling out. I do think Hisuian Goodra still has a decent amount of strengths in this metagame, but going into the EUIC it had quite a favourable Lugia, and now with the introduction of Duraludon VMAX into the most successful Lugia archetypes, I do feel that Goodra is slightly less well placed than it was going into that tournament, so definitely have to be a little bit more fearful of Lugia and its use of Duraludon. So that is something to monitor with the deck, but in general we are trying to be quite a tanky, lost zone engine, relying on this rolling iron attack, which deals 200 damage and we take 80 less damage from attacks, giving us effectively 350 hit points to get through for the opponent, which is quite a challenge. And we also have this Moisture Start ability, allowing us to completely heal all damage from this Pokemon. So combine that with the rolling iron, we have a pretty nice baked-in package where if the opponent isn't able to get around this Pokemon with boss's orders and escape ropes, sometimes even the combination of the two, we can just gain free turns effectively, as many of their attackers become far less effective. And if ever someone is playing into Moisture Star, it can be a really easy way for us to gain additional turns, which is exceptional. Another great reason to like Goodra is that we naturally play Water Energy, which combines really nicely with Mirage Gate and Radiant Greninja as well. This is a fantastic card to draw us cards throughout the game and help us activate Melony, our backup supporter, that can also provide energy acceleration, but this Moonlight Shuriken is still a great threat that we can represent against our opponents if they don't develop Manaphy in time, or if we take out Manaphy and they cannot re-establish it. We can try and go for Moonlight Shuriken plays. Not just great for dealing with lower hit point Pokemon, but also because that Rolling Iron deals 200, having an option to deal 90-90 could be really good into V-Star matchups as well, like Arceus. So definitely something to bear in mind. Radiant Greninja is a great single prize backup attacker, as is that Cramorant. Just a 1 copy because it can get in the action early with just 4 cards in the Lost Zone, which is quite easy to do with Colress and Flower Selectings, but we want to be using Goodra for the majority of the time because it's most effective in the active position announcing Rolling Iron, because that's how it becomes as tanky as possible. As you can see, the list is pretty simplistic. That's one of the main things I like about Hisuian Goodra, is that we aren't trying too many crazy things in here. We have the Colress and Melony 7 support account, as well as Raihan to give us some energy acceleration and to get us towards that Mirage Gate in the first place. Fueling that Lost Zone is still really important for us. We have a pretty healthy amount of Boss's Orders and Serena to pick up Pokemon on the bench. And we have a Roxanne for hand disruption, which is also really nice in the deck. The 1 counts really are just kind of niche cards. The Choice Belt is pretty handy, allowing us to knock out Dragonite V. It can also be really helpful at dealing with Tyranitar V as well. T-Tar is a little bit less prominent now that they will oftentimes go for Duraludon, but it still can be a Pokemon you can try and get through in 1 hit with Rolling Iron. And it also, as I was mentioning, Duraludon gives us a way of knocking out evolving V Pokemon before they evolve, right? As long as we can combine the Belt alongside a Boss or a Serena, we can pick up V Pokemon and take a knockout with Rolling Iron. There is possibly a debate to going up to a 2nd copy of Choice Belt and even a 2nd copy of Temple of Sinnoh, because this is A, very helpful against just general V attacking decks, but B, in specifically the Lugia matchup, Temple of Sinnoh is huge here. We're not only shutting off Gift Energy, but we're also shutting off V-Guard Energy for things like Tyranitar, so they can no longer tank our Goodra hits alongside Choice Belt. It is a convoluted combo, but we have Raihan to try and help us get there. Or we can use this proactively against a Duraludon player, hoping they do not have a Stadium Bounce just naturally in their hand, and then the Duraludon cannot attack us. That's really a cross your fingers moment. You're really hoping for the best. Maybe try and combine this with Roxanne in the later game stages if you can, and hope to get a free hit onto a Duraludon where they cannot hit you back. That's kind of really what you're hanging on to. I think possibly to stay relevant in this format, we may have to concede that Temple of Sinnoh is just too important to deal with Lugia. I think right now the spaces that are kind of floating around in the deck list would probably be the 7th Water Energy. If you want to play around with the list at all, this slot could end up being that extra Stadium or that extra Choice Belt if you really want to. You could possibly just cut the Beach Court for Sinnoh as well, but it puts a bit more strain on your Switch cards, which can be a little bit shaky at times. So these are the things I'm thinking about with Goodra. Like I said, going into the EUIC, this was one of my favourite choices. I thought it was good at the Lugia decks, good into the Lugia decks at the time and the Lost Zone variants, which is still the case. I think we are losing a bit of ground in the metagame perspective. Yes, Giratina's probably on the down low, but the Lugia is adapting and is a far more popular deck and sort of main meta threat to bear in mind. So let me know your thoughts on Goodra. Can it survive in the format now that Lugia has adapted? I'll hear it all down below, and hope you enjoy the games. Cheers. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. So, looks like our opponent wins the coin flip this time around, and our hand is absolutely atrocious. We have the Drapion start. Looks like Colress will be the only way that we can get out of this hand, as the opponent gets the VIP pass, and we see that we're up against Gardy. They can Ultra Ball a few things away, get second Rolts developed. They're just going to retreat into Mew here, get a Mysterious Tail in, and we're going to see level ball for third Rolts, so really good start for them, at least. Must be nice. As we have Comfey and Colress. You'll notice in this deck list I'm playing a couple copies of Switch Cart. That's really a debate between the two lists, if you play a couple Cart and a couple Switch, or just quad Switch. I've been trying out both, but this is one where I had Switch Carts in here in a 2 counts. Not too big of a deal, honestly. As we're able to select and get a retreat in. The Colress was pretty kind. We were able to get a ton of ball search and get into the game. We can possibly nest ball out another Goo here. I do like Goo when we don't have the option of an extra pivot out to get a Cram hit in, obviously. So we have lacked on that pressure, and the opponent's had a really good start that also able to research away the rest of their hand. It's a little bit worrying here. The one thing they have just done now, though, is filled their board without a Manaphy, and that is sneakily pretty good for us, actually. They've also rare candied into an Arcana Guardy, so I'm not expecting too much pressure from them, probably just expecting more Curliers to come down, as we actually see Ultra Ball for their first refinement Curlier. So I'm mostly expecting just attach Roar of the Sword as their best play here. We see Refinement, then Mysterious Tail can grab Level Ball for another Curlier, so they have done really well to develop their end, but we have got to 4 in the Lost Zone, and if we can actually get to 7, we could completely troll their board. Switch is not bad. We have Greninja here as well. I should probably Greninja away Metal Energy if I'm going for this high roll, but looks like I was just keeping my options open, as we actually hit the Colress from the Greninja. So now it's just down to us with 6 in the Lost Zone to hit Water Energy from Flower Selecting. We have one more try with our benched Comfey, because we are holding on to Mirage Gate. I don't have V-Star either, so that would be the backdoor option, but we actually hit Water Energy, so kind of fortunate in that I got rid of the sort of wrong energy for the biggest high roll play option, but here we do get to 7 in time to Shuriken away double Curlier, and because they got into Gardy, they had no way to put pressure on us on the return. So definitely just a little PSA. Make sure you're keeping an eye out for Manaphy when you're coming up against Goodra, because it is still an avenue they will look to do. As this game we're up against Lugia, and looks like we're going second. We have a slightly better hand though. Starting Goodra with V-Star in hand, we have double VIP into Rope, so there's something. And straight away we're going to see the Duraludon, which is the scariest thing for us by far, right? We really don't want to face that guy down. If we can help it, we'll try and get the early hit on. I think that's one of the only ways we can try and represent tempo. We could hit it with a Cram and then use our Choice Belt effectively. That could be something open for us. Have the debate of whether I want to keep this board space open for Comfey or Goodra here. In the end, I do just go for the Goo and get the 1 selecting in. We do hit a switch out, so I can get 1 more Flower Selecting. No dice on the supporter, but I could go for a Greninja play here as well. And looks like I am just going to... I think I like attaching energy because it gives us the option to Flower Select into like Melony and Water plays next turn. So I think that is correct to play that energy, even though we could have held it for another concealed cards. I think this is the best way for us to actually try and represent some tempo. So overall, bit of a shame that we weren't able to develop a Colress there and get closer to 7, because we are holding on to Mirage Gate right now. As the opponent goes for Burnett, and then finds V-Star and VMAX, so there's going to be no early cheesing of their Duraludon, unfortunately. And looks like they will be able to Primal Turbo to this V-Star and just take a knockout with Tempest Dive. The only good news is that the hand size is kind of low. That's the real only objectively decent thing here. But they did get rid of an Lumineon, so I would expect their hand to be pretty decent, honestly. So Lugia is doing its thing right now. And they're also starting to put impact energies on the Duraludon. They, of course, can also use single strike energies to take a knockout. Top decking Colress is actually pretty good. We have 2 in the Lost Zone right now. We've basically drawn all of our Pokemon, so those Nest Balls are easy fodder. Option of Roxanne versus Gate, that's a tricky one. Looks like keeping the rocks open is going to be my choice here. With 2 gates already in hand. And not much else to do here, so I'm just going to try and get the Tempo Poke in with Cram. I'm a little bit fearful of a Gust play from our opponent with Duraludon. So I'm not wanting to evolve into V-Star. I want to keep that option open with the gates that I have in hand. And it looks like I'm just attaching this Choice Belt to the active here. It's a bit of a strange one, because it's still awkward for us to get through the Duraludon, but I'm expecting a Gust as like their best play next turn. So I'm putting it onto the Cram just in case they do go for Gust. I can try and get a 2-shot onto this Lugia. The only reason to hold the belt here would be possibly I could do a Greninja play into the Duraludon when it was active to hit it for 120. No, but even that's not a good number. Yeah, so it's one of those things where it doesn't really feel great any which way now that the belt's gone. So just cashing in on it seems reasonable here. As we do select into another Colress, this will help us get to 7 now at least. We have easy fodder there as well. So the gates are open for us, but the problem is, right, there's just a Duraludon sat there. We were able to find Sinnoh though. So this is where I'm essentially just making my stand. I'm going to pay retreat the water, so I have Melony open to me next turn. And I'm just going to come in with the Rolling Iron plus Sinnoh as like my best play. But essentially, as long as the opponent can Stadium Bounce, I feel pretty far behind. The good news is we get to also remove Gift Energy here, so they are stuck with that low hand size of basically just top decks and prizes at this stage. As we see a Capturing Aroma, coin flip. Gets heads, which isn't Pumpkaboo, which is nice, but they do have the Ultra Ball, which I think just spells doom for us, essentially, because they have 4 prize cards left, they can get through every Goodra, and we don't have any like viable 1-prize attacker at this stage. We can hit the Duraludon for 90, but that really doesn't set up anything. And you can see why the Duraludon is now such a big issue for the Goodra. It gets around Rolling Iron, and it goes like boom, basically. So, yeah, just a quick demonstration of how much worse the Lugia matchup is for current day Goodra. I'm literally just without a paddle at this point. I could try Roxanning, but they have game on board. I have no way of trying to get around this with single prize attacking options. It really comes down to if the Sinnoh can work for you. And in this case, it didn't. There was maybe a debate to use or like hold the Sinnoh last turn, let my first Goodra go down and try and go for a Roxanne play this turn alongside the Sinnoh. That would possibly be the only other thing we could have done. But let's get into our next game here. And it looks like we're going second with that Drapion start again. Not much Comfey starts in the video today. And we also have no ball search, no switch outs whatsoever. So that's going to be what we look for with our top deck. As the opponent isn't finding it too difficult to get their own Comfeys rolling, they're going to throw away Psychic. And we pick up Water, so I think Greninja's definitely one of the takes. A debate there to take Goodra as well, so it opens up the Melony from our hand. But we were fortunate enough to get the Goodra, so I didn't have to Melony to Drapion there. And despite having, like, low-key quite a bad turn, we got to Melony, so I'm still threatening a Rolling Eye next turn. And that's kind of the benefit of having this dual way of accelerating. We have turn attachment Melony attach to get rolling, and we have the Colress get to 7, so the Melony is really important when your hand just isn't that great, honestly. As the opponent is doing well with their Lost Zone, I'm going to see switch into the Cram and just a hit for 110. So we have Greninja and Colress to try and get us towards a switch out here. And we do find one eventually. Having to get rid of a couple of energies is a little rough. But we are going to hold on to the Waters. The Waters are obviously better like with Melony, so we can recycle them, and they're better to attack with Greninja, don't forget. So we are just going to attach to the goo and get rolling here. At least we're responding with pressure. Starting the Drap definitely improves our opponent's prize race, unfortunately, but it's not too big of a deal. If they just hit it once with a Cram and then Sableye it, we could basically assume it's similar to just a Comfey or something else. If they're two-shotting a two-prizer, it's basically the same thing. You can see a Colress into Comfey. They must be getting close to 10 at this point, because this is their turn 3, and they basically haven't missed a beat. And yeah, we actually do see the Sableye now. Happy to see the Lugia go into the lost zone, because that's obviously scary for our Comfeys. They're going to Nest Ball out another Sableye, so that's definitely one of the best ways they can get around Rolling Iron, just keep using Lost Mine. And yeah, it looks like the Sableye is coming into the active position, so they will be getting rid of Beach Court and a Comfey from hand to get them to 10. And we'll see the Lost Mine finishing off Drapion. And they also get a counter onto Greninja, which sets it up for another Lost Mine later, and Comfey, because why not? We have the option to conceal cards here. They still haven't developed Manaphy, so trying to get some Comfey into the mix is interesting. We're only at 4 in the Lost Zone because we haven't been able to use any selectings all game, which is pretty rough. Because now would be a great time to start punishing with Greninja, right? If I could take a 2-prize turn this turn, it would be feeling pretty good about things, but as it is, we're sat here, we're gooing, and just trying to make it difficult for our opponents. They're just going to chain the Sableye thing. This stage, I haven't seen any Greninja from them. It's possible that they're just playing a Charizard build. Especially with the Lost Vacuum, you got to think it's more likely a Charizard build, right? Gate builds typically don't have that much space. And the opponent is going to knock out Comfey here, starving us a little bit of cycle. And they're also going to get to work on Goodra by the looks of things. And they're actually just going to split up the Goodras. Now, we do have Roxanne available to us, but our opponent's still on 3 prize cards, so I'm still not too concerned about hand disruption. I'm probably going to save it for another turn here and just develop next Goodra. That's probably my best play here. If I get a chance to get to 7 and use Greninja, that would be my ideal, but it doesn't look like I'm getting there right now. With only 1 Comfey remaining, I'd have to hit exactly Colress. And we have 2. I'm also just debating whether or not it's right to put another Pokemon into play here. If I put a 3rd Poke down here, they can just Lost Mine the entire game away and ignore our Goodra, so it doesn't make sense to get anything else involved there. So again, still a little bit unfortunate to just whiff on getting to 7. So like it's taken so long for us. But the opponent still is kind of just not prioritizing Manaphy, which is again something we kind of low-key are representing. They haven't seen a gate all game, so maybe they're just not worried about it. As we're going to see just another Sableye come up. They're doing the classic, just mine everything away. They're going to Colress here. They still have a decent deck size, especially for a Charizard build. Typically they'd have way less cards in deck at this point. We finally see the Manaphy developed, which is certainly going to slow down our progression. I was hoping we could have a 2-turn clock here whilst weaving in the Roxanne. But now they're kind of like at odds with each other, the boss and the Rox. And we know Lost Boxes are very keen on playing Clara anyway, so it would have been a little bit hopeful. I think at this point it should just be me trying to thin out some cards and play the Roxanne. Now the opponent's at 2 prizes. I also have to debate whether or where the best place to heal is. We have 80 damage on us, so I'm still 270 in the active and 240 on the bench. So if I'm scared about Charizard, the thing that they'd have to belt active, or they'd have to find cross switches for bench. And because I still have 3 prize cards to go, I'm going to try and milk this Rolling Iron value that little bit longer if possible. Because the 2 V-Stars aren't too different when I'm essentially just trying to play around slightly different things here. We have to rope into Greninja because it's a single prizer, that's no doubt. Just having a look at my hand, I suppose, there. But we haven't seen any of the Charizard action. I don't think there's any Fire Energy in their discard piles, so like Clara's not very live. They don't really have many good plays here. And in fact, it's just going to be a Spit Innocently for something to do, essentially. So that's pretty nice. And our opponent still has that lower hand size to work with. So now seems like the turn where we're just going to, yeah, again, continue to thin cards that don't really matter. I can simply retreat out of Greninja. I feel like just knocking out Cram is okay. It's basically the same as Manaphy at this stage. Keep the rope open in case I randomly have to get around like a Miltank or something. We can just roll here. So I think the things that I lose to are basically like Echoing Horn, Sableye, or a big combination with Charizard here. And they only have a 3-card hand. They have Flower Selecting, but Beach Court not developed either, so... We see the Clara, so it would have to be Clara plus Switch card plus Horn for us to be in trouble here. We see the Pokestop, it only hits an item card. So even without us being able to utilize Greninja this game, we've still essentially just been big enough and difficult enough to get through, especially with that Roxanne. I feel like that's a really big card in this matchup to try and slow down that really good late game that Charizard Lost Boxes can certainly have. So I feel pretty safe with the whiff, essentially, of Pokestop. We actually do see cross switches, so they were close to something, I suppose. They have already committed Psych Energy at this point, though. They just get one more select in and then concede, because they cannot deal with us. So let's get one more game in, I think, today. So far, we've been able to beat a Gardy, lost to a Lugia, and then beat a Lost Box, and finally a Comfey start. Insane. Maybe that's a good omen. We get to begin here, but our hand is actually atrocious. It's all in on the selecting, but sheesh, we hit the VIPs. That's pretty good. We again have that classic Water Melony combination in hand, so ideally we hit an energy off the top, and we actually hit 2 insane cards. We get Comfey and Water Energy, so I can still get a ton attachment here onto Goodra, and I get to have an extra Flower Selecting, which is nuts. I'm then able to VIP out another Goodra, so despite that shaky turn, it only took one selecting into one concealed card to actually completely fix this hand. And now we're looking in a really good position because I am threatening Melony attach next turn with extra dig from Flower Selecting and possibly Greninja as well. So that's looking pretty nice. The opponent started Lumineon and it is a Guardy deck, so starting their 2-prizer definitely a little bit awkward for them. But looks like they are able to fog an Ultra Ball out. Couple of basics here. They may want to go for Mew just to have a lucky dip with Mysterious Tail, but no, just second Ralts and just a pass. So definitely hurting them that they started their Lumineon. I feel like they probably would have Lumineoned for a supporter there with their Ultra Ball had they not led it. But we are able to select into Metal Energy, so now I have the easy Melony play. And we have Escape Rope to knock out a Ralts straight away, which is definitely good for our pressure. When I'm holding on to bosses as well next turn, it really puts the pressure on them to candy into EX. Otherwise, I'm just going to completely continue to wipe their board away. As it stands, they have a 4-card hand, and they actually do candy into the EX, which is pretty much, and research, so actually pretty much the best outcome possible for them to get back into this game. We also see the Mew coming into play now. See the energy, retreat into the Mew. Will we see any more Ralts get developed here? See the Fog Crystals, so that probably does mean Ralts. We're not that close to gating, unfortunately, for our Greninja, because, again, they haven't developed Manaphy just yet. We only have 4 in the Lost Zone. And with only one switch out, it doesn't feel safe enough. I feel like Boss is probably just the safest play here. And because we know that Guardy's play Collapsed and Penny, I want to just take the 2 prizes while I can. This puts me down to 3 prize cards. They have 6, so I'm really starting to stifle their use of Zacian. Zacian's a really important card for them because it has some of the highest damage output thresholds in their deck. So if I get down to 3 prizes now and they don't take a prize this turn, or don't take a 2-prize knockout this turn, which is really hard for them to do, I'm basically just locking out Zacian for essentially the whole remainder of the game, which is just so strong for us. And the opponent will now Serena actually get rid of the Collapse, so knocking out the Lumineon for the extra prize seems pretty smart, as they're going to draw cards. They actually get candy into Shining Arcana Guardy now, You can get, looks like they've hit some Psych Energies. They're going to load up their Arcana Guardi. I'm not sure how many energy are in their discard pile right now. They, of course, can't get to 350 with that Guardi, which is essentially what we're threatening right now. Only 2 Psychic in the discard pile, so they've had a slow time of things here. As looks like they're just going to get Cresselia in the mix for a little tempo poke with their Moonglow reverse. Try and put this Goodra a little bit closer into range whilst also continuing to powering up that Guardi. So it is just going to be a prod for 60. But now I feel that we're just so far ahead in the prize race, especially with Boss's Orders once again in hand. I feel so confident that just dealing with their Shiny Arcana here just puts them so far behind. The only thing that could possibly go wrong at this stage is that we just get Roxanne out of the game, I think. Because I have no backup, like nothing on the backup Goodra right now. That's why you're seeing this Ultra Ball, just a thin jank, essentially. As we Rolling Iron down to 2 prize cards. And we're still very big and difficult to deal with. They have no backup Rolts on the board. So essentially their best attacker is Guardi EX at this stage. And things are looking pretty rough for them. I'm still threatening Greninja plays as well. We haven't really fielded our gates too much, our Lost Zone. We finally see the Manaphy come out, but it looks like there's not much left for them. We see the Worker for 3. But I think this one is donezo. The Guardi just couldn't set up in time, and it really is just a showcase of how good Rolling Iron can also be in the matchup. So that's the games for today. Let me know what you think about Goodra, how well it's placed in the format, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.